I didn't even hear the Muzak cut off, but apparently we're there. So, welcome everyone to the City of Hutchinson City Council meeting for the August 6, 2019 meeting. Linda, if you please call the roll.
Deckent.
Here.
Dave Line.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Here.
Inskeep.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor, if you'll be so kind. Thank you.
I'd like to say something before I pray, if that's okay.
Certainly.
He made sure it was not off-colored or anything like that. But what I'd like to say, when I was privileged to travel in July for several weeks and covered a lot of miles. And as we left Hutchinson and was hitting potholes on the way out, I told my wife, I said, we need to pray. Say, Lord Jesus, come quickly. And so after I traveled several miles, going through several towns, I come to figure out that Hutchinson does not have the worst streets in town. They do not have the worst highways around us. And so I just want you to know I'm not praying that way right now, but if Jesus comes quickly, I'm okay too.
You're all right. Okay. Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this gracious moment. We thank you, Father, for this city. We thank you, Father, for the blessings that's upon the city. And Father, we just thank you for our council members. We thank you, Father God, for the leadership that we have. But Father God, we thank you for the workers within this city, because it takes more than leadership. It takes leadership with great followers. And I thank you for that. And Father, I just thank you for everything that you're doing. And I thank you, Father God, as I close with prayer, Father, I thank you for the privilege, the opportunity that we have is to vote. And I pray, Father God, that everybody that would go out and vote. And Father God, we just look at the situations, we look at the people, we look at all the different things. But Father, we vote by our heart. And Father, by the things that we see and the things that we know that's right. That Father, we need leadership that's following the plan. And Father, leadership that and Father, I just pray for common sense. That Father God, our leaders have common sense. And Father, we just thank you for many things. And we thank you for the election today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, dear. Appreciate it. Next item.
Item 4A, a proclamation for the Creekside neighborhood.
All right. And if I could have those from Creekside join me at the podium, specifically Kathy and my new favorite person, Olivia. Hi there, how are you today? Can I shake your hand? Oh, high five, yeah. Excellent. There we go. Thank you. All right. We don't usually have that kind of excitement and activity, so I love your enthusiasm. Oh, very good, very good. Okay. Whereas the area south of 11th Avenue between Main Street and Cow Creek was entirely platted by 1887, 15 years after the city of Hutchinson was founded. And whereas housing development in the area took off after the turn of the 20th century, continuing through the 1940s. And whereas on March 28, 2018, Hutchinson Housing Commission identified the neighborhood around Magnet School at Allen as the newest featured neighborhood of the Hutchinson Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. And whereas on April 6, 2019, residents established neighborhood boundaries between 4th and 11th Avenues from Main Street to Cow Creek. And whereas in May 2019, residents voted to name their neighborhood Creekside Neighborhood. And whereas the neighborhood is home to many civic institutions, businesses, and recreational facilities, including the Hutchinson Public Library, the Hutchinson Arts Center, the Jim P. Martinez Sunflower Trail, and the Bernard White Park. Now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the neighborhood between 4th and 11th Avenues from Main Street to Cow Creek as Creekside Neighborhood. Thank you very much. Would you like to say some words? Absolutely.
We're super excited to be a part of the Creekside neighborhood, and I'm happy to accept the proclamation on behalf of our area. And a reminder that tonight is the National Night Out, and there will be an event at 10th and Jackson from 6 to 8 p.m. for anybody that wants to come. Okay? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And she's absolutely correct. And there's also 3 other neighborhoods that are participating. Excuse me,
2.
3 in total, 2 others. Southwest Bricktown and Farmington. But I was personally invited to Creekside, so I will be at that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Or at least to start with, anyways.
Try to
Very
get
good.
there.
Next item, if you would, please.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
Okay, this is the portion of the meeting where we invite those to come up to the podium, announce yourself, and feel free to engage the council on items that are not on the agenda. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes, and again, if you'll say your name and usually address, we'll just go with your title.
Good morning.
Hi, Dejada.
Dejada, the Human Relations Officer for the City of Hutchinson. I thought it would be a good opportunity to share some updates with the City Council and the community as what we've been doing with the Human Relations Commission since I've started back in April. We have been excited to be able to participate and always looking for opportunities to participate in community events and supporting the people and the voices of Hutchinson. By participating in the Unity March, we were able to highlight one of the primary objectives, which is to create harmonious relationships among the various groups in the city. We also participated just this past weekend in the Emancipation Parade and the Emancipation Weekend, where we were able to engage with the community, share our pamphlets, our new brochures, and get a chance to talk with folks concerning discrimination and issues that they have been facing. By participating in these activities, we are able to really connect, and so we want to continue to do that, and we just are always looking for that opportunity to do so. An update on our complaint process: we have seen 7 complaints since since I started in April. 2 have been handled via advocacy, 3 have moved through the local investigative process, 2 have been referred to the Kansas Human Rights Commission. And we're holding organizations accountable for fair treatment of the citizens of the city. It is paramount to me and the commission. And if there are complaints that aren't sure if they have a legal claim or not, we are encouraging them just to come and talk with us so that we can walk them through that process. We're excited that we have 3 openings. Maybe excited is not the best word, but we do have 3 spaces available for new commissioners, which we are looking for now. We've put that out there. The applications need to be completed by the 16th of August. The appointments will be finalized by September 6th, and they will start their term on September 18th. We're really hopeful to infuse some fresh energy into the group. The commission has worked really, really hard in the past year, especially getting this position filled. And so now we're on that journey to start really doing the work that we are tasked with in the community. So actions that I just want to share and requests from the council and the community, just to continue having real conversations about discrimination, help us to review policies that negatively impact people, and especially people in the protected classes. Review those policies with a critical lens and ensure that decisions that are made and that the conversations that are had are really considering everyone fairly and equitably. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your work.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Dejada.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the update. And she said she was excited about the deal. I'm not sure, again, your verbiage, if that, but I'm excited. And the reason I'm excited is because we've had, I think, 10 or 11 applications to it. So there is
fantastic.
excitement about individuals that want to participate, want to be part of the message and crafting the message and getting on board with what we've got going on. So that part is very exciting. So once again, thank you for the update. Anybody else who would like to address the council? Dominic? Yeah. A little background. I met with Dominic. He came by my office the other day, and we visited a little bit about the process of the city meeting. I reminded him that it is a business meeting, but there is a portion of the meeting where anybody from the public can step forward and have their 5 minutes and talk about items that are on there. No action. We talked about that will be had, but this is your opportunity to do so. So if you don't mind, give your name, your address, and take a deep breath and go ahead.
How close do I gotta be to this to?
Get up a
A
little.
little
A
closer.
little closer if you would, I think.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
You're
you're
fine.
good.
Okay. Oh, first time being up on stage, kind of like this, but yeah. I'm Dominic. I live at 1015 North Main, right next to the library, basically, within walking distance at least. And so I did give my name. Yeah, I gave my name, I think. Yeah. I got a lot of things I like to talk about. And okay, so I already got some of them addressed by the police chief, which is a pretty awesome guy, by the way. And, yeah.
We think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he filled me on what was going on, because I heard some things at the library about how some students that were going into the 7th and 8th grade were talking about drugs and stuff, and I was worried about that. So I was thinking, and I talked to him about it, and he was telling me how these programs were already a little bit of them in place, and I thought that was pretty cool. And so I got this other one that I have for like a greenhouse idea. What it would do, because I know we have a lot of community gardens and stuff that have been tried at the public library, and I'm wanting to see if we can do something like inside like a place, so it's not having to deal with like, because some people have, from what I've heard from people that lived around there, have come in and stolen the stuff that was already produced, and that was the problem why we couldn't keep the green community garden around the public library, from what I heard. But I want to do it and see if we can renovate one of the buildings around the police station or that aren't being used at the moment, or near the homeless shelter or around New Beginnings, so we can actually use those buildings to produce plants while also having them to where we can protect them and keep them from being broken into or stuff like that. So I'm wondering if we can help the people learn something that can help them in the future. And yeah. I'll have a lot of other ideas, but I'm not sure if I have enough time to explain them. But yeah, that's about it.
Wonderful. Well, and we did. We had a nice visit the other day, and he's an idea guy. And I have not met his father yet, but he said it's the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah,
Your
my
father
dad's
also.
a big thinker.
Right. And I can't speak to the merit or the how feasible some of the ideas were. We talked about that, but
Yeah.
that's how you get to places though, is by at least having discussions,
Yeah.
throwing stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and so on. So I appreciate you finding the courage to step in front of us. Hopefully it wasn't too intimidating.
It was a little bit.
A little bit, okay. Well, we try not to be too menacing, but
I did realize something. Spaghetti does stick
please.
to the wall sometimes.
It does what now?
Yeah, spaghetti.
Oh, okay. It does stick. You did a great job. So
Yeah.
once again, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else who would want to speak to the council today? All right, I would say going once, going twice, sold. Okay, next item, if you would, please.
Item 6, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
Gentlemen, let's not fight.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7, a public hearing to consider the application of GeoChemicals LLC for tax exemption.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Council, let me just provide a little background on the project as part of the kind of open the public hearing. We've got several items on the agenda today that deal with this project. But the council, remember, we did receive an application for tax exemptions for the construction and operation of this company, GeoChemical, which specializes in the manufacturing and sales of oil and gas field specialty chemicals. The company is estimating they'll create between 50 to 75 jobs at this project over the next 2 years. The new 10,000 square foot building is actually started under construction now, located out near the old consolidated site off of 17th in Halstead there. Actually, the address, I believe, is 14th Street. But the property tax exemption request does qualify, as we've looked at it under the Kansas Constitution regarding granting of tax exemptions. We've looked at the application, it's complete, and it does qualify under the law. And as required, we have completed the cost-benefit analysis, and it does show a very positive cost-benefit to all taxing entities within the county. You recall at the July 16th council meeting, we actually approved a letter of intent and set this date as the public hearing for this project. And as you look in the packet, there's information on the potential job creation, the recommended proposed pilot payment of lieu and taxes. And so the property is going to be totally exempt from property taxes, but later on in your agenda, you'll approve a memorandum of understanding agreeing to a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax schedule. And essentially that means that the schedule we've got projected is that this project in the first year would be 95% exempt, year 2, 85%, year 3, 75%, 65%, and then 55%, and then the last 5 years at 50%. And so the in lieu of payment would be the other parts of that. So at this point in time, staff would recommend that council approve the ordinance as presented, exempting the property from ad valorem taxes for economic development purposes based on the in lieu of pilot schedule that we presented. We do have representatives from GeoChemical here, Jason West. If you have any questions, he was here at the last meeting, talked about the project. But again, we have several items today that we'll be dealing with on this project. Be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we'll start maybe with a conversation amongst ourselves, and then if that leads to wanting to invite, it is a public hearing, so we should offer it to those in the audience that want to speak to the matter as well. But is there any questions for the city manager?
Mayor, I've got just a couple of questions on the material that was sent to us under the category of project assumptions. First of all, I think there's a typo here. On the grid, it says valuation $400 million.
Yeah, I
It's
saw it.
400,000.
So
Yeah.
that's a typo error. And then my other question is that in terms of all the documentation, it refers to the building at $400,000, and then there's also described the real estate of a little over 7 acres. And my question is that on the exemption, are we exempting both the real estate, or the land and the building together, or is it just the building?
Both, the land
Both.
and
Yeah.
the building.
Okay, I just wanted a clarification.
Not the existing building that's
Not the
there.
existing
Yeah.
building,
Right.
but the 7 acres
And the new
plus,
construction.
Plus the new
plus the,
construction.
plus the new, up to $400,000, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, I think that's the value that was estimated for that
right.
construction of that building.
Yeah, it's a little bit misleading when
Yeah.
it talks about the building, but doesn't refer to the land, so it is land and building.
And the land would be not a big value.
Yeah, okay, fine,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good question. Any other questions or commentary about the materials provided? Seeing none, I'll invite, because it is a public hearing, anybody who has an interest in the matter or an opinion on it that would want to step forward and bring that to the council, be more than willing to hear what you have to say about that. Not all at once, mind you.
I move we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, seeing that nobody rose, it's been moved and seconded. Linda, if you don't mind, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. All right.
Okay, I would move to adopt an ordinance exempting certain property in the city of Hutchinson, Kansas from ad valorem taxation for economic development purposes and the proposed payment in lieu of taxes payment schedule and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Once again, it's been moved and seconded. Linda, if you wouldn't mind, call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. That was easy. Next item.
Item 8A, consider resolution approving the Hutchinson Rod Run as a special event in a designated entertainment district.
With us today, we have Mr. Jim Gruber. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what you're up to. I think we're somewhat familiar, having had so many years now, but let's hear about it.
I was kind of expecting to get a high five like
Oh.
the last one we got here.
Thought
Thought that was the new protocol. Again, this will be our 12th annual. 12 years flies by pretty fast, as we all know, it seems like. We've had fairly good luck over the years, except for last year we had a little bit of rain, which kind of dampened things, obviously, just a little bit. But still was a good event. We're looking forward to a rainless event this year. And pretty much same old as we've done in the past, the same size of event. Yeah, there's the map, kind of shows the orange lines dictate the event district area that we've had for a number of years. Nothing new particularly, unless somebody has any questions. We're Obviously, still trying to do our fundraising and sponsorship people that we're looking for. So if anybody knows or wants to help sponsor or anything, we'd be glad to talk about that. Otherwise, that's about it, unless somebody has questions.
Remind me the dates again.
4th and 5th of October.
There it is.
Yeah.
It'll be here before we know it, won't it?
Yeah, it will. It's this time of the year again.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So, yeah, we'll have our, the rest of our procedure basically is getting our event district approved through the state too for liquor licensing and that part of it. So this is part of that.
You've had similar entries to years prior, or is it up even?
It's
or-
probably down a little bit,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Nobody gets really excited when they think about possible rain. So these guys that have cars and stuff, they pretty much wait until the last minute to do
okay.
that.
Yeah.
So, well, we do have some.
Yeah.
Some register back in January.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Hit
they're
and miss.
they're just waiting for it. So we've had good responses. We go through the year. We go to car shows all around the area, and obviously advertise our event and stuff. So we've had good response for that so far.
Very good.
So, and I did leave a little information there for you. So it kind of shows a lot of the car shows that are around the area that you can still attend yet this year. So
Any new events, happenings as part of the car show this year?
probably the
Or
one
different?
difference, we've done our Kids All Wheels show for the last few years, and we've tried to do it inside Memorial Hall. It's been really difficult to get people to enter inside the hall to do that. So we're actually going to move it to DCI Park, and we're going to have a lot of extra kids activities and things that way. The Salt City half marathon is going that morning also. So there'll be a lot of things going on Saturday morning at that end of the event for sure. Yeah. But I think we're actually going to have the city PD and fire department. We're going to do a little touch a truck thing there. We've talked to the National Guard about bringing some vehicles out and some different things. So be a lot of stuff for the kids to do.
Very good. Well, it's a great event. Like I said, 12
Great
years
event.
running, so we're happy that you're able to keep pulling it off.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
When we do appreciate all the support we do get from the city and all the different departments. We couldn't really do it if we didn't have that extra support. So
Very good.
I really do appreciate that.
Great. Is there a motion on the resolution?
Paul wants to explain it to us.
No, I think the mayor's doing a great job.
Okay.
Paul said he had a speech lined out.
If it's required, Paul can define it for us, but I feel like 12 years running.
Go with it.
Go with it. Is there a motion then on the resolution?
I would move to approve resolution authorizing the Hutchinson Rod Run October 4th, 2019 through October 5, 2019 as a special event pursuant to City Code Section 18-801 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyra State Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Once again, thanks, Jim.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Jim.
much.
Thanks for
Appreciate
doing
all
what
the
you
help.
do, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks. Take care.
We'll pray for rain 2 days earlier. How's that?
Right.
Get it out of the way.
Just no rain at all.
Just no rain at all? Okay.
Sunday or Monday after would be.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
okay.
Thanks.
Thanks again. Next item, if you would.
Item 8B, consider ordinance prohibiting parking on Fountainwood Street and on East 20th Avenue.
This feels like a Paul thing,
Yeah.
Well,
if you don't mind.
okay. Council, you have before you for your consideration a proposed ordinance to limit parking along Fountainwood from 23rd to 20th and on 20th from Lorraine to Waldron. There have been requests from council members themselves about the parking that's gone on there. It's gone on for a number of years with commercial vehicles. Currently, they can park there because it's zoned commercial. And it's not a violation, but there's been concern about whether it's consistent with the neighborhood and activities around it, with the church, with the Trinity's football field, with the medical facilities that are along there, and that is one of the main routes to the hospital now. And there was some concerns and hopefully addressing this. This is one means of addressing it. You can decide if that's appropriate. vehicles, I would guess, are probably six to eight vehicles. They are a lot of semis. There's a livestock trailer that's there on a regular basis.
Yeah, I counted 4 yesterday.
Yeah.
3 or 4 yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it's what you'd like to do there. You have the ability to control the city's rights of way, and this is a proposed ordinance to address that.
Talk to me about how we're going to communicate this to people who've been.
It's going to be posted, has to be posted.
So signage will be
We'll have to have
placed.
some type of signage.
And we'll do some
I mean,
warnings, if you will. I mean,
Yeah.
just to get people used to the idea, just like we do typically when we put something new like that in place.
I'm thinking of Apple
Apple
Lane.
Lane.
When we did that,
Yeah.
the bridge took
Well,
that out of
Yeah.
truck traffic.
We'll work
kind of-
with PD on what that might look like, but
Bit of a
give
grace period
definitely. I
at the
mean, we know some of the regulars there, but don't know. A lot of them are independent drivers, so it'll be
Yeah.
hard to make contact. But I think word will get around, and if we just kind of handle that on a, informational basis to begin with, and then move on from there.
Yeah, we've taken a lot of complaints over the years from residents in that area,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
It's been
Long overdue.
a long time. It's been a long time, yeah.
How much further does the commercial zoning extend? Might we simply move the parking one direction or another, or does this cover essentially the commercial zoning that's in that immediate area?
It covers that area. You're always going to have,
Moving
and
them.
that's kind of been a concern, all right, if not here, then where? That's been a continued use of commercial parking there.
I guess I wasn't so much looking at the entire city as that area itself. Is there something nearby, is there commercial zoning nearby that?
Right, like Waldron would not allow for it necessarily, but are there other streets that might?
And most of the others, if you go down 23rd, that's residential, so it's
Yeah,
not
it's
allowed.
all-
Yeah,
West of
there's
Lorraine
not.
is all
Okay.
gonna be- Are they allowed to park in vacant lots of some of the larger commercial buildings like Kmart or Target?
They have to have permission from their property owner.
I see.
And,
Okay.
and there has been some of that in the city. If you look at the north side of the parking lot for Osco, there have been some trucks parked there. And other locations, sometimes I've seen them at other commercial properties, but they have to have the owner's permission.
Yeah. When I worked at Walmart, we used to give permission, but I think that ended. So it would make sense if it's vacant, it's not going to upset residents, but it's not our call if we don't own it, so.
There's a few individuals, I know on East Fourth that own property that they lease space out or allow trucks. It's a commercial operation. You can park your truck here. It's out in the industrial area out on East Fourth. So there are options. It may not
Yeah.
be as convenient for some of them individually, but there are options there, so.
Very good. It's not really a public hearing, but I might ask if anybody in the audience has anything they want to add to it. I don't know that anybody's here on that particular matter, but I'd at least extend that offer. Doesn't look like it. Okay. This isn't one that's really been a bugger in my side per se, but I've heard from a lot of folks that it's a bit of an eyesore, maybe some safety issues with regards to the hospital, using that as their one of their main routes now. Those who participate at one of the churches there, hard time seeing when they get out, looking around large trucks. So again, I've heard more people suggesting that we do this than not. So it seems like it might make sense.
Now, this doesn't preclude parking on the street, simply truck parking, correct?
Just trucks.
Just heavy truck, yeah, truck, tractors, buses, things of that nature.
Yep.
With that being said, is there any other questions or a motion or?
I move to approve an ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 23, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of City of Hutchinson, Kansas, prohibiting the parking of trucks, tractors, etc., upon Fountainwood Street from East 23rd Avenue to East 20th Avenue and on 20th Avenue from Lorraine Street to Waldron Street, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Oh, I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded. Linda, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave-Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. All right, next item.
Item 8C, consider resolution establishing the 2020 Census Hutchinson Complete Count Committee.
Morning, Ryan.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Just for the record, my name is Ryan Vietlick, Director of Planning and Development here with the City of Hutchinson. I'm excited to bring you this morning. It's already time to think about the 2020 census, so that's coming up quickly. Census Day is April 1st, 2020. The census is going to be done a little bit different this year. This is the first time that it'll be an online census, so instead of people getting that form in the mail and having to fill it out, you'll actually get a postcard, you'll go online, you'll enter a secure code, you'll answer your questions, and you're done. And so as part of this, the planning department, we're kind of the department that wants to kind of head up this discussion in the community, because the planning department is probably one of the major users of census data within the city. And so as part of the 2020 census, kind of nationwide, the Census Bureau has been encouraging communities to form what's called a complete count committee. And basically what that is going out, and we have the ability now with technology to actually drill down to census tracts and census blocks and figure out where in the 2010 census there may have been some undercounts, or there might have been where it took 2 or 3 times for a census worker to go out to get that information. The census is vitally important to communities. For example, one of the main ways that federal funding is distributed is through census apportionment. So just in fiscal year 2016, Kansas received over $6 billion in federal funds. And the thing to point out here is these are federal tax money that Kansans are paying and that citizens of Hutchinson are paying into the federal coffers. That money is going to be spent one way or the other. And so we want to make sure that we're getting all of the money that is entitled to our community back to us. And so, this is not, new taxes going up or things like this. This is tax money that's already being paid into the federal system that's coming back to residents in all types of things. Community Development Block Grant, which we're going to talk about here a little bit later. Head Start, free and reduced lunch. I mean, there's a list that goes on and on of what those federal programs are. So it's vitally important. It comes down to about $2,100 per state resident per year. So if we miss, a household of 4 people, the city is looking at losing, $10,000 to $15,000 in federal funds over the decade. So so there are some real things that add up to that. Furthermore, data from the 2020 census determines congressional representation, as well as state legislative and school district boundaries. And an accurate population count is vital to the city for planning for future growth, economic development, social needs. And one of the big things that we're really kind of pushing is we really want a good, accurate count of where the city's population is going, because there's been conflicting. Are we growing? Are we losing population? Are we staying the same? And so we really want a very, very good count in 2020. And then, finally, a census that counts everyone once, only once, and in the right place saves taxpayers money by ensuring that as many people respond to Census 2020 the first time, which will not require census takers to go door to door. So that's a huge savings for taxpayers as well. So what this complete count committee would actually do is city, we would head it up, but we would bring in community partners, educational partners, the media, people from our faith-based community, and then some of our undercounted populations as well. So homeless, the community college is a big one because we want to make sure that where those students are spending most of their year, that's where they're getting counted, and the Census Bureau agrees with that assessment as well. So we'll be working with them on that as well. And so as I said, the Planning and Development Department will be serving as primary contact for these efforts. If the resolution is passed, we will begin recruitment of complete count committee members. We've already began a list in our office, and this is an idea of where we'll kind of start small, and then we'll ask the people who gathered who else needs to be in this room to ensure that everybody's getting counted. And then the exciting thing is that we're also going to be pushing out a social media campaign called #CountMeInHutch. So that was on the screen, and Rebecca did a great job with that, incorporating the city flag, and we kind of want that just to sort of grow generically. So, people just kind of using hashtags and then encouraging, their neighbors. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about the census, and that would be part of what the Complete Count Committee would be doing as well, ensuring that people are know that that census data is secure, that nobody, not even the president of the United States, actually has access to that raw census data. It actually goes to a mountain in Nevada. It gets buried for 72 years before it could actually come out. So all of those type of things, we really want to educate the community on that. So basically what I'm asking for you guys today is a motion to approve a resolution which would actually establish this committee and have this work start. So.
A question for you as well. I think I read it somewhere in here or somewhere else that there was some funding through the league or something. What is that for? That's for getting the word out?
Yes. Yeah. So the League of Kansas Municipalities is going to be awarding micro grants to different communities to help offset some of the social media advertising costs. So we anticipate we might take some ads out on Facebook, just kind of reminding people Census is coming up. Hey, you'll get a postcard here in a couple of weeks. Make sure you go online and fill it out. So the message will kind of change as we go through census season. Minor grants to kind of help offset some of those costs of doing the social media advertising. So.
And again, you're gearing or steering rather everybody towards the online submissions. Obviously, that makes most sense.
Yes.
But you're still going to have boots on the ground, I assume, knocking on doors. And I thought in 2010 there were some paid positions or something, right? You take a course.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them actually, and that's one of the other things that the Complete Count Committee will be doing is advertising for that. So this summer, I think they're kind of wrapping it up now, but the Census was looking for a handful of people to go and actually drop the pins like on a mobile device of where the addresses are actually located. And then yes, in 2020 there will still be people who will be going door to door because there'll be either people who don't respond or the Census Bureau also knows who doesn't have very good internet access. And so in those areas where internet access may not be as strong, they'll actually still get that mailed in form. So the Census is trying all different routes to ensure that everyone gets counted. The other thing is, while this will be predominantly a Hutchinson led, we are inviting Reno County to join in on this as well. I don't believe they're going to actually be setting a complete count committee up themselves, but we're at least going to invite them to the table so that because there's some questions, especially when you get on the fringe of the city. Are you in the city? Are you not in the city? The people that are on the fringe are getting a lot of information still from the city, so we want to make sure we partner with our other jurisdictions around the area to ensure that they're also getting a good count, because it's important for the state as a whole. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan, as residents of the United States, are we required to participate in the census?
It is actually a constitutional requirement. The Constitution says that the United States government shall count everybody at least every 10 years. So it is required by law. It's not a penalty, but the Census Bureau is going to try everything they can to find you and count you.
Down. And I assume that part of the group that you're going to convene, I mean, the library is obviously a place for people to go who do not have internet access. And I assume, could we set something up here?
Absolutely, we can. I mean, one of the ideas that, and like I said, we'll kind of have the complete count committee come up with some ideas, but one of the ideas was, even having some people from the complete count committee go set up in front of Dillon's or Walmart on Saturday morning in April with a laptop and say, hey, have you filled out your census form yet? It takes you 3 minutes. Just do it here. Type in your code and get it done, and just check that off your list. So.
Okay, very good. Okay, are we done?
Unless anybody else said anything. Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I will move to approve the resolution establishing the 2020 Census Hutchinson Complete Count Committee and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Light?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Cyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next item.
Item 9A, consider conditional use permit for hazardous materials manufacture and storage facility.
See, and when we're talking about burying things in a mountain for 72 years, I thought it would be this item, not this census material, but please, Amy.
All right, good morning. Amy Allison, Senior Planner with the Hutchinson Planning Department. As already mentioned, we are here at a request from GeoChemicals LLC to conduct a hazardous materials and manufacture storage facility at 1600 North Halsted Street, but really it's the eastern half of this. And while they get the PowerPoint going up, I'll keep going through some stuff. As our revised land use table as of last fall says, the proposed use, which is chemicals that will be used at oil and gas fields, does qualify as a hazardous materials based off of the determination of the fire department. So currently the applicant is Sid Arpin with BG Consultants, and he is here, as well as Jason West with GeoChemicals, and they'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have about their project. The subject property in question, again, is 1600 North Halsted Street, and as I mentioned, it's technically the eastern half. The applicant is in the process of finalizing their lot split application as we speak. So kind of where that building is, it's a little bit more to the west there, which is the property that will entail, but that is the property in question. The zoning designation for this lot is I3, which is our heavy industrial district. It is our heaviest zoning district we have in the city. And as you can see, almost all of the surrounding properties are also zoned I3, except for the area to the north, which is C4. The comprehensive plan land use designation is industrial, again, mimicking the current zoning designation with commercial being to the north. So kind of a quick look at the site plan. As you can see, they are going to keep the building and the access facing onto 14th Avenue there to the left of your screen. As part of this proposal, they are adding a new building to the west, which is to the north of your screen, which is about 10,000 square feet. They have already gone through a site plan process and it has been approved. But with the conditional use permit, we also look at the facilities that they're proposing and existing and any outdoor storage, parking, and all of that. Staff's analysis of the site plan and as according to our zoning regulations and the use regulations for the use table is provided in your staff report. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those, but it's all there for you. Just wanted to also note that the Board of Zoning Appeals did approve a zoning variance for the eastern setback for the existing building. There was a use setback requirement of 50 feet for a hazardous materials use. Of course, that existing building doesn't meet that, so they went through the Board of Zoning Appeals and they determined that due to the vacant lot next door and just the general use in that vicinity that it shouldn't pose a problem. So,
I mean, I just had one procedural question that doesn't
Absolutely.
necessarily have to do with this particular item, but in general, if this is our heaviest industrial zoning designation, why would we need a conditional use permit? Is it always going to be required for chemicals?
it's always going to be required for hazardous materials
Okay.
because those are the most combustible. And so what we're really looking for is more of a intense review of a proposal as opposed to just any
Okay.
regular
That's
chemical manufacturer
And
and
what my
storage.
thoughts were, but then seeing that no other member of the public addressed the commission and no written comments were received on this, so
Mhm.
I assume that
Yeah.
the neighbors
I mean, you
in
hope
agreement.
most of the time that, when somebody's putting in this type of facility, they're choosing a site that is really suitable for that type of use. But in some cases, you could have an I3 zone that's really next door to residential. And at that point, we would want that higher
sure.
level of review.
That makes
So,
sense.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. So here's just a blow up of the specific site that they're going to be occupying on their lot. As you can see, it shows the existing facility, the outdoor storage, the proposed building, and then they have the required parking spaces, which for the new facility would be 4, and they have that kind of in between those two buildings there. And then they have some overflow parking and their access points, and I know that they would be happy to speak about how they intend to use the site a little bit more.
One question.
Sure.
Which way's north?
North is actually on the east, or the right side of
the
your
right
screen.
side,
Yes,
yeah.
sorry.
Thank you. I thought it might even be on there, but I wasn't trying to.
It's on this one, but
Okay.
yeah. Just wanted to give you kind of a more focused
Detailed,
view.
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So quickly, they're just building, this is the new structure. It's going to match pretty much the existing structure that's there. It's a typical industrial style building. And then some quick photos of the site. This is the existing building, and you're looking to the northeast. Again, the existing building, different viewpoint of the northeast. You're looking north there.
Will that be the primary access, to this, what you're showing here?
I believe so, yes. That
Off of
will
off of
be
14th?
one of the primary access, I believe more for the overflow parking, and then they're going to add another access point right roughly around here.
Off of 14th,
Off of 14th, yes.
not 17th.
Not 17th.
Okay.
It will link up to an existing driveway onto 17th, but they intend to have most of their truck traffic go from 14th.
Okay.
Again, this is looking to the east. As you can see, there's kind of that concrete paving there to the north of the building. That's where outdoor storage will be on the property. And then also, there will be a building kind of blocking where the geochemical sign is, as the proposed site plan suggests.
Is there any fencing, part of the footprint?
There will be. I'll get to that when we get
Okay.
to the conditions.
Okay.
Yep. And then this is just looking along that east property line. As mentioned, there was a zoning variance from the use setback on this one that was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And as you can see, there is a vacant lot next door, so they felt that there was no detrimental impacts that could happen.
What is the new setback from 50 feet to what?
That is a specific use requirement for hazardous materials.
No, I meant
Okay.
what will the setback be now?
17 feet.
17 feet.
Yeah. So, and then this is just some surrounding properties. So that's the east, that vacant lot. To the west, that is the other half of that lot that is being split off. As you can see, it's being used as gravel storage primarily. And then some of the neighbors to the south here. Again, they're all industrial in nature. All right, and so these are the factors to be considered by the council. I can go through them, but they were also provided in your packet if you have any questions. The Development Review Committee, so all the departments within the city who reviews development projects, did convene and reviewed this project on June 19th. All the comments received have been complied with or are a condition of approval that it has been included in your packet as well. The Planning Commission reviewed and approved the request on July 23rd with the following conditions of approval that was included in your packet. And as Jada had already mentioned, we didn't receive any public comments in regards to this project. So Planning Commission's recommendation for approval, there's some very standard ones that we put in all of our conditional use permits, but more of the specific ones to this project includes, as John had already requested, there will be a screening fence required along the north edge of the material storage yard. We did recommend a year to be in compliance with that because that is a piece of the project that I don't think they were anticipating when they first came before us. Another area that we are requiring is that outdoor storage of all materials be within a approved structure, if you will, whether it be a tank or a transportable, I'm sorry, I can't remember the term. Tote, thank you. They have to be approved by the Development Review Committee before they can be stored on the property in those facilities. So I think those are kind of the big ones. If you have any questions, happy to answer those. Here's a couple more of them. Again, all of these, like we mentioned, were comments that were addressed. And so they meet all the requirements of our zoning regulations and these specific use requirements. So at this time, that kind of concludes my presentation, but if you have any questions for me, happy to answer them. But like I said, the applicants would be happy to also talk about their project with you.
Very thorough, thank you. And I'll just chime in, and again, it's in everybody's information, but planning approved it. Jada pointed out no public commentary, positive or negative, and staff agrees with planning that we should go forward with this, correct?
With the conditions as presented to you, yes.
We're really happy to hear about the flexibility on the screening, so thank you for working with the applicant on that.
Questions of Amy while we have her up here? None? Jason, can I invite you up? Sure. If you don't mind, and if you give your name and location of your business, it'd be fine.
Good morning, Jason West, Chairman of GeoChemicals.
Perfect. I'd like to start, and we've said it before, we'll say it again, what an exciting project, and it's neat to see it starting to come to fruition.
Thank you.
Even just as I drove by, I saw the sign on the building now to the
Yep.
existing structure,
Yes.
and that got exciting. Not that our upcoming vote is contingent upon it, but we've asked others the same question. How have you been able to work with the city with regards to the regulations, with regards to the ordinances? And again, be honest.
Certainly,
we can
yeah,
take
you
it.
bet. You bet. I can't speak highly enough of Ryan and Amy especially, and they've helped us, understand what the requirements are, put some clarity to some of the questions that we had, and John as well, just kind of working obviously behind the scenes as usual, and also in front of the scenes too. So it's been very, very good.
Okay.
All the way around, and so we're very thankful, actually,
Good.
just to have these folks to work with.
Awesome. Any questions of Jason while we got him on?
Jason, just as a point of clarification, the lot split,
Mm-hmm.
but interested in
Pardon me?
what the future might hold for the property to the west along Halsted Street.
I believe the owner that we purchased that from.
So you did purchase that?
We did.
Okay.
So we have not the west portion, but the east portion. So that's the portion I think we're going to be splitting off. Is it 7 acres? Is that right?
7 acres,
7
right.
acres. Yeah. And so that gentleman's going to be keeping the property, and I think he's also looking to sell that as well in the future. If
Along
there's a
Halsted
need.
Street?
That is correct. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many acres there approximately? Do you know?
It's probably going to be close to 7 as well, I think.
7,
Is that
okay.
right? Little bit larger.
All right.
And that has access to Halsted. Yeah, there's a.
Yep. Halsted and 14th, right there in that corner.
Okay.
Jason, I'm certainly
Yes, sir.
supportive of the project, but I just the idea of hazardous chemicals, and recognizing that there had been an incident in Sterling some years back. When I know you're not associated with that company any longer, but
It was about a week after we left the business, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You're referring to, I think it was in 2017.
it was longer ago than that, wasn't it?
Well,
maybe.
there was a very large
Anyway.
fire there, but yes.
Could you speak to safety practices, policies in handling the chemicals? Could you also speak to I guess a little bit more to the nature? Maybe nature is not the word. The volatility, the
Flammability? Maybe it would be a good word? Okay. Sure.
explosiveness, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
So generally speaking, our products would fall into two basic categories when you're talking about fire, concerns, flammable as well as combustible. Flammable and combustible are defined by, and I'm talking out of turn here, probably over my pay grade, but ultimately depending upon flash point. The products that we handle in that facility would be, I think, almost all, if not all, have actually a lower flash point than gasoline that's in our cars. The main things that we do are prevention of, reduced static electricity is one thing that we think a lot about. So there's a pretty significant bonding and grounding program that we have. So all the buildings are bonded and grounded. As materials like this flow through a pipe, there's a potential for static electricity to build, and so you bond and ground the pipes as well. So that's one aspect of safety handling that we think a lot about. As you saw on the PowerPoint, we're putting up that second building. There's a good reason for that. You typically like to have some separation between the solvents, which are really the main flammability threat, and your what you call manufacturing or the actual process of molecular creation. That occurs under somewhere between 325 and call it 500 degrees Fahrenheit. you want to keep those kinds of temperatures away from flammable solvents. And so that's why we segregate the buildings, create space in between, again, just as a kind of a safety precaution. Those are some of the big ones that we, utilize just to kind of engineer out the risk as much as possible. And so that's, I would call those the main ones, if you will. The other is really just using the appropriate containers for certain chemicals. So if you look at a facility such as ours, you'll find a mixture of what they call raw steel drums, which are just a carbon steel drum. You'll find stainless steel containers, totes. Those are, kind of a large, approximately the footprint of a pallet, and contain products. And then you'll find actually some what they call poly drums, and so those are plastic drums. Depending upon the type of chemistry that it is, it goes with a very specific container. And so you don't want to put water-based products into a container that's raw steel, because eventually it'll rust out. So a lot of those things that we do just as kind of a matter of course, in addition to regulatory requirements. I think there was a question about fencing earlier, and so the facility itself is fenced, but there were some post 9/11 requirements that were put into place. I believe it was in about 2007, that require fencing with certain amount of razor wire up top and things like that to prevent. And this is all under what they call the CFATS regulations, chemical. Anti-terrorism regulations, essentially to prevent people from accessing the site. So there's some visitor controls included in those regulations as well, just because a certain amount of training is required to just even step foot on site. And so if you all would want to visit, we'd probably put you through a little bit of a training and say, this is an area where we don't want to get too close and things like that. So I don't know if that does a good job of answering.
I think so. The chemicals that you manufacture are also, what's the word, maybe noxious? I mean, do they, if there were to be a spillage, aren't, am I correct, some of those chemicals you wouldn't want to breathe them?
Correct. You wouldn't want to be exposed there are certain exposure limits on again, and this is very chemical specific, so I don't want to breathe xylene as a good example of a pretty common solvent. I don't want to breathe that all day, every day. So there's ventilation, testing that we do, and so we do kind of air quality management testing and things like this. There's, basically vapor, I'm going to call it vapor recovery, if you will, but also just ventilation that we keep a lot of it is just, the guys right there on site dealing with those every day. I mean, they've got their proper PPE, gloves and masks and things like this, but we also want to, nobody wants to breathe that stuff all day. It's kind of like getting a whiff of it when you're filling up your tank at the gas station. Don't do that all the time. So that's where we come up with a pretty aggressive ventilation system as well. In addition to, I skipped over a big one, of course, which is the fire suppression system too. So that'll be obviously part of these facilities too. So.
And the ventilation into the air dissipates the concentration that would
So the ventilation system is actually passed through what they call a scrubber, and that's scrubbing off a lot of the volatiles, and then. State of Kansas and EPA through the Clean Air Act actually have some requirements that govern us up above certain thresholds, and those are what really kind of dictate what kind of an air permit we would have, and there's various gradations of it. So if you think about a large facility like what maybe Boeing has in Wichita as an example, that's a Class 1 air permit, pretty significant, and a lot of environmental engineering, to go into their processes. Ours would be something less than that, but still environmental engineering that goes on. So.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
Interesting.
You bet. I don't know if I'd say interesting, but I could put you to sleep at a party very quickly with this.
Very good. Well, we got Jason. Any additional questions or commentary? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
All right.
I had asked for representatives from the fire department to come and address issues that were there to be an accident, incident, whether it's a flammability or explosion, or even maybe the release somehow of a ruptured tank or whatever of chemicals. So with that.
Doug Amon, Operations Chief, Hutchinson Fire Department. Yeah, we have everybody on the department's trained in hazmat operations, which is a federal mandate. And then a third of our department is hazmat technicians, which allows them to do more things. We have our own hazmat team. You referred to the 2 fires at the place in Sterling. We did go to both of those as a hazmat team. We also have the state regional hazmat teams located in Sedgwick County. It comes out of Mays. We've used them a few times. We also went to, the last time we had the fire up in Sterling, they went with us as well. So we are familiar with those kind of things. We do risk assessments on all our buildings, and so when this one comes in, we'll go out and do a risk assessment. We'll have an idea what they have. Having a fire suppression system obviously brings that risk down a little bit. Those kind of things. But you know, we deal with the railroad coming through. That's a mixture of things. You never know what's coming through with that. And then you have the highway. So anything, all those things, we're prepared to take care of those things. So.
The closest station is right down the street as well.
That's correct,
on
yes.
Halsted and
11th and Halsted, yes. So, and there's 2 pieces of equipment that run out of there, so.
As well.
Yes.
So our obviously we can rapidly respond, and as far as a regional basis, there's a good coverage in terms of additional response regionally.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Yeah, when I was thinking about this, I did consider the railroads and highways, and thinking probably an operation like this is less of a concern than what comes through on railway cars and tankers in our highways.
And a lot of times anymore, when you get these chemical fires, you know, if you watch them across the nation, you usually just let them burn. That's the best way to take care of them. So, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, being out in the industrial area where it's at, you know, it's a good spot for it. So.
Okay. Well, it was again thoughts that came to my mind, and I was interested in hearing from our fire department as well. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Good thought. Anybody, anything else? Or a motion?
I would move to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the conditional use permit for a hazardous materials manufacture and storage use to be located at 1600 North Halsted Street pursuant to the factors and conditions listed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 9B, consider memorandum of understanding with GeoChemicals LLC.
Would you, as a matter of procedure, would you like us to just continue down, or do you want to interject in between each motion?
You mean, of course, the memorandum of understanding is really just the agreement between the city and GeoChemical on the payment in lieu tax schedule.
Well, I move to approve the MOU with GeoChemicals LLC and authorize the mayor to sign.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay.
One question, just to
please
make sure I understood. The existing building is not part of this exemption.
Correct.
But the land and the new construction is.
Correct.
Okay.
It has been moved and seconded, but I'll allow anybody else an opportunity to speak to it if they wanted to. If not, going once.
Call the question.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next.
Item 9C, consider development agreement with GeoChemicals LLC.
It's a geochemical day.
What is that?
I move to approve the development agreement between the City of Hutch and GeoChemicals LLC as presented.
One of the words that struck out me in the development agreement is the word proportional. And I think it's important that we all understand that if for some reason the threshold of the employment levels did not meet the development agreement, then only the proportional amount of jobs that are not then fulfilled are then there's a rebate back to the city for those. So it's not all or nothing. It's just a proportional. I think that's important that we understand that.
Yeah.
And that's a typical clawback phrase clause we have in all of our agreements. The difference here, basically, from our current policy, we deviated a little bit in that, typically under our policy, we would pay these jobs after they've been earned, which would be, 4 consecutive months. We're paying this up front, and then they have 2 years to perfect that. And if not, then there would be the clawback. So.
Well, and also important for the public to know that we have an economic opportunity fund for this exact purpose. This is not something that's coming out of a general budget that is going to cut into other services. This is exactly why we have those funds set aside.
And, but I'm glad you brought it up that we are deviating somewhat from our policy, whereas it reads that. But we grant ourselves that latitude. I don't remember what the subsections were, but certain ones that allowed us to do so. But by no means is this setting a precedent that we're going to do this every time. Each one will be reviewed. Each one will be looked at. GeoChemicals, they're locally operated. We're familiar with their work. I think we all felt pretty strongly that we knew where they were going and so on. Okay. It had been moved, I believe. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second.
I had a question The clawback would still be based upon the 4 quarters.
Correct.
As well. So it's really the only difference from a more standard is that we're providing that money up front, that incentive up front rather than after. But the outcome will be the same. Either they do achieve 100% and keep 100% of the money, or they don't. There's the proportional return.
Right. A lot of times on these projects, there's some upfront costs, which in this case to ready a building for development, and it works out better for the applicant. And in this case, I think it's good direction for us.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Siemens, I think that was 08 or 09, didn't we provide that $1 million up front?
We did.
So
that was a big one.
So it's not the first time we've done up front. It's just the first time we've done up front since we adopted
a
a very
policy.
flexible policy. So, and we did, I believe, utilize clawback provisions when they did not hit their 400 mark during one of those quarters. So it's a proven method that we've employed before.
Yeah,
we just don't want to put too much emphasis on this being an exception because it's actually pretty run-of-the-mill for what communities do.
We've done it more than just the Siemens. I think the Collins project years ago. So we've had several where we paid that money up front. And again, a lot of these projects need a little bit of injection of capital to get the improvement going, and it makes sense. But so.
Okay.
That's it. So yeah, it has been moved and seconded. Unless there's any other comments, I'm going to call the roll, please.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Solner?
Yes.
Iris De Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next, please.
Jason, thank you. Welcome. Look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Looking forward.
Looking forward.
Item 9D, consider request to approve grant administration contract for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant application.
Good morning, Amy Allison, Senior Planner again. Before you today is a request from the Planning Department to approve a contract with the South Central Kansas Economic Development District for the grant administration of the 2020 CDBG grant that we will be applying for. And you will see that at the next meeting. I know there was a question about timing as why we're approving these contracts prior to. To clarify, it is a timing thing. These contracts actually have to be a part of the application as you review them during the public hearing. So it's counterintuitive there. You have to approve them before you even consider the grant application. So that's just a clarification there.
So why would we why would we even consider disapproving the grant application if we're approving these things?
Well, these are contingent upon whether.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it just.
I know.
But
strange.
It's interesting.
But during the public hearing, the decision could be to not apply for the grant.
Then these contracts are null and void. So, and they're null and void if we were not awarded the funding. Just to clarify, again, we are going with the South Central Kansas Economic Development District. They were the only person that we sent a request to who responded, who wanted to be a part of this grant application process. So the total that they could be awarded as part of the grant administration would be $25,000. Again, we are proposing that half of that would be paid by the grant, and then half would be paid from the planning department's grant administration account. So if you have any other questions, staff is recommending approval, and I do have their application or their request or proposal for you guys to review if you would like to see that.
Amy, there were at least 2 or 3 or more
We notified
entities
five.
that
Mhm,
you
yep.
contacted for
Proposals, yeah.
Proposals.
And we received a letter back from one of those that they were not interested, and then we haven't received any other communications from other people, so.
And we've worked with SCED for
Yes.
a long
Yes.
period of time.
For those of you who have been on the council for a while, our last CDBG housing rehabilitation grant was Avenue A, and SCED again administer the grant administration and the inspections, which we'll get to next.
Very good. Any other questions?
I'm jumping ahead a bit, but the same kind of comments apply to the next couple items as well.
That's correct.
Requests were sent out to multiple entities. Either they didn't respond or said they weren't interested in
That's correct.
on down the road, except for SCED, who did respond in
Yeah,
regards to
and-
those items as well.
In communications with the state, this is fairly common. There's not a lot of organizations who do CDBG grant administration, so we're
They're
lucky
pretty
to
bureaucratic.
get somebody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
Very much a niche.
Yeah.
Any other comments or a motion on this particular item?
I move we approve the request to accept a proposal for the grant administration of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant for Housing Rehab and authorize the mayor to sign all documents.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes, next item.
Item 9E, consider request to approve a housing quality standards inspector contract for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant application.
Again, this is along the same lines. This is for the actual inspection piece of the grant. So if we get an application, that they would go out, inspect the property to determine conformance with the grant process, make sure that those houses would be viable and could be rehabilitated under the grant dollars. They would also determine what type of projects would be conducted per house, and then they would also do any risk analysis, so radon testing, lead-based paint testing. That would be their role in this as well. And just to note, fiscal impact, the CDBG grant would pay 100% of the cost for the HQS inspector and risk assessor, so.
Great.
And that was estimated at 18?
18.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I move to approve the request to accept a proposal for the Housing Quality Standards Inspector of the 2020 Community Development Block Grant for housing rehabilitation and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes, next item.
Item 9F, consider 2020 Community Development Block Grant contract.
All right, this one is actually for the grant writing piece of this. SCED has been working with us. We didn't have to go through a request for a proposal for this. They've always worked with us on that, so we contacted them. They have been working with planning staff to help determine the area that we would be going or focusing in on for the CDBG grant. They've done public outreach for us, as well as obviously writing the grant, taking the photos of all the eligible properties, and they've gone out with Jim Sightnader to determine whether the houses that we have received applications on would be eligible or not. So they've already done a lot of work as a part of this. We had to wait for this process before we could approve the contract. So
Yeah.
again, $3,000 for this contract, and this would be coming from the planning department's grant administration account.
Right.
Anything else? Okay, well, I will move to approve the 2020 Community Development Block Grant contract for grant writing services with South Central Kansas Economic Development District and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes, next.
Item 9G, consider setting public hearing for 2020 budget.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, attached in your packet is a notice of hearing for the proposed 220 budget as required by state law. The public hearing is scheduled to take place on August 20, 2019 at your regular meeting at 9 a.m. here in the council chambers. The notice of publications you have before you reflects the proposed expenses for all funds and associated tax rates for the property tax supported funds. The 220 budget, as it sits today, proposes a mill increase of 0.31. We've got those numbers down there for you. A total mill proposed at 44.432. We also are note the Hutch Rec budget at 3.683, which should be included in this as well. The budget figures there represent basically the maximum that we could spend. So if there's any potential changes coming forward, would have to be a reduction of the proposed budget as published. If we chose to raise that for whatever reason, haven't ever had that happen, we have to republish and have another public hearing. So again, this reflects the work the council's put on the 2020 budget over the course of the month of July. Stand for any questions you might have.
First and foremost, a thank you to the city manager for helping us through the process, to the staff that were able to individually review their own budgets. We tasked them for 2 years running now with a pretty tall task of finding those cuts. I think we were able to come to a somewhat amicable agreement on the budget as proposed here before us today. We'll have that hearing to find out if we did right or not. But again, thank you to staff and everybody for working hard to do this, and to the council for going through the motion as well to make sure that we were able to fund the things that we wanted to see funded and not cut anything that we didn't want to see funded as well. Any other commentary before we motion?
A question. I couldn't come up with a 0.31 increase in looking at the numbers, maybe a 0.28. Is that just the difference between actually then drilling down and figuring out what it would take?
0.28's better, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Angela Richard, Finance Director. The difference is actually, like I think you said, a 0.28, because what happens between when we set the budget and when they actually assess the taxes could change that mill levy slightly. So the 0.31 is the difference between what we budgeted for 19 and what we're budgeting for 2020. But the actual in 2019 did change because of the assessed valuation.
Because of the assessed valuation.
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
Okay, so it went up a little bit. Apparently for this year, and therefore, okay, gotcha.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification.
It is confusing.
Any others? Motion to set the date?
I would move to approve the notice of hearing setting August 20th, 2019 at 9 a.m. in the City Council chambers as the date, time, and place for the formal 2020 budget public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Although I support the setting of the public hearing, I do not support the 0.31 increase, and therefore I vote no.
What about 0.28?
I still vote no.
So you don't think we should have a public hearing for the budget?
No, that's not what I said.
Well,
Well, you're voting no against a public hearing for the budget.
For the mill levy increase, yes, that's correct.
You would have the opportunity between now and then to change that.
yeah, this is just the public hearing.
This is the
It has
public
nothing to do with the amount.
Setting the date. Okay.
It's just the date. Like,
Thank you for the clarification.
Stands by his.
Whatever.
Okay.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next item.
Item 9H, discussion of city manager search process.
Very good. This is something that's on the plate. I think we're all taking this very seriously. And we tasked John with kind of maybe coming up with an outline. And it is just that, an outline, a suggestion that they put together. But I think there's some good material in there. But this is at least the start of the conversation of how we as a council want to proceed with this hiring process. So, John.
Yeah, I want to make a motion that we not accept the city manager's retirement.
I don't think that's an option.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's a vote of
Second
confidence.
here?
Second.
All right.
That being said, we'll move forward on this conversation.
Anyways.
I mean, that's out of order?
Yeah. You're out of order.
Right.
Yes, we put some thought to it, and I thought what we might do today is I've tasked Tom Sanders, our HR director, kind of help you guys facilitate this process. I certainly will offer whatever opinions you need or input you need from me, but it's really your process, and Tom will be here to kind of help you lead through that. So we might have him kind of walk through this and then just have some conversation.
Thanks, Tom.
Good morning, Council. Tom Sanders, Human Resources Director. Yeah, it's an unenviable task to replace your boss, and I know you've been working with him a long time. He's done a great job, so we're all just kind of like, so, but here we are. And I worked with John last week to kind of put together this kind of discussion, bullet points, if you will, kind of maybe the beginnings of an RFP for a search firm. And we looked at several models. We looked at Lawrence, we looked at Salina. I got some stuff from Columbia. Seemed like there's another city or two that we talked to, and got their RFPs and kind of boiled it down to these 2 or 3 pages that we provided for you in terms of just kind of a good starting point. You know, one of the things that using an executive search firm, part of what you're doing there is you're paying for their expertise on a number of different fronts, including really, I think one of the things a really good executive search firm does for you is really helps you guys sort out in your mind what you're looking for and the critical competencies that city manager needs to have to be successful. And by competencies, you know, it's the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and also just character traits that are required for a city manager of our size and scope and complexity. So, and they can certainly, from there, go in and help you develop an overall plan for how you want to attack the recruitment. And, you know, obviously, I think, you know, it's very important. I think you guys would agree that we follow equal employment opportunity principles, and that it's a very transparent process, and high-quality candidates from around the area have an opportunity to apply and be seriously considered. The other thing that I think is really helpful for an executive search firm that you just typically don't get out of your average HR department is they're in those waters every day, and one of the things that they can really do is find those, what we in the HR world call passive candidates. It's those people that aren't necessarily actively looking, but maybe a really good candidate for us that are in other areas. They can tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I've got you know, you need to talk to City of Hutchinson, or this may be a really good opportunity for you. They're not out there searching the job boards and all that kind of stuff. So, in executive search firms, I mean, that's what they do. They have those contacts, whereas your average HR department really doesn't. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important that we engage a firm like that. Let's see. And then they can also really help you on the selection process once the candidate pool is developed. You know, if you want to do kind of some kind of community engagement, they can kind of help you model that and what has worked well in other communities, give you some options there and facilitate all that. And then also just whatever you guys do in terms of the interview process for yourselves, you know, helping you get organized with that and asking the right questions and the right kinds of assessments and that kind of thing. And then last but not least is once hopefully maybe we'll have a couple of really good candidates, but just negotiations with the finalist in terms of the final package that you want to put together and offer that person, making sure it's competitive and something that's mutually agreeable to both parties. So that's high level.
Sure, right. Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate you putting this together because, and that was the thing, when it finally hit home, that this was, you know, we were going to be tasked with this, I said, well, you know, where's the playbook?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have one per se, you know, and there's not one. And even if we did, it might have changed over the last decade. So this at least gives us an outline of some ideas that involve a search firm and things like that. But I would ask anybody up here, obviously, I know we've all thought about it, if you have any thoughts or comments about this outline, about some other ideas, other searches you've been involved with for other positions.
What's been our history? When you were hired, what was that history with the selection process?
It's been 15 years ago, but I do remember that. Actually, the city did not use a firm at that time. They basically, there was a citizens committee of 7 people that helped, it's a little different, helped narrow the field down to finalists that they then recommended to the city council at that time. The city council then made the final decision, did the interview process. So,
How did they identify candidates? I mean, you were an obvious, having history here, so to speak,
I think
but-
just through typical
People
ICMA
turn-
advertisement,
yeah, people turn in
those
their
kinds of things, yeah.
Okay.
So,
An ICMA, that is.
International City Managers, yeah, that's the job board, probably the most looked at job board that would be out there. But there are others, you know, through different city manager associations, Kansas, Colorado, all of them. We all have our own city manager associations that have job boards as well, and it'll, yeah, so.
Yeah.
But as Tom said, the candidate or the search firm, sometimes it's not just about who looks at an ad and applies. Sometimes there's people that have a lot of applications out there. It's maybe finding that individual that might not be looking but is encouraged. So,
Well, I've been
What's
involved
the
with
trend
this.
of the cities in the Midwest typically of using a search firm?
Yeah,
today?
I would say of cities of our size, it's a very common thing, and probably a more common thing, at least, you know, what we did before with John, not to knock that process, but I think it's probably an outlier. I think most cities of our size are gonna use a search firm.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I was going to mention that too. I've been
Yeah.
involved in a few CEO searches, both with and without a firm, and the ones without a firm did not go well. I do agree that we need a citizen committee, but I think that a firm can shepherd us through how we could coordinate that and how to get people on that committee, and the steps we took to bring on the new police chief, for instance, that involved a citizens committee. But I feel very strongly that we need a search firm to help guide us through this process.
What sort of cost can we anticipate through use of a search firm?
You know, some of it's gonna depend on the scope of work and how much, you know, again, that's part of the whole RFP evaluation process. But I would say probably, I'm guessing here, but I would say probably somewhere in the neighborhood between 20 and 30,000.
yeah.
That's,
20 and 30.
yeah.
But we cannot underestimate the importance of getting the right person to replace John. I mean, I've worked with a lot of city managers in my job outside of the council, and not all of them are highly qualified.
And you may have some
You're not
candidates that
including
look really
Hutch.
good on paper.
I'm not including Hutch.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're an outlier in a good way, John, and it's not going to be easy to replace you.
Yep.
How many firms are you looking to engage?
You know, we've been, as we've been talking to these other cities, we've been asking for their vendor list of who they send RFPs out to, and we're currently kind of culling that list right now, but I think we'd probably be looking at probably 6 to 8 that we'd send the RFP out to. We may not get responses back on all of those, but I think, you know, from the ones that we've gotten, I think those are good, solid firms that we probably couldn't go wrong with, probably using any of them, quite honestly, so.
Local, regional, national?
No local, regional, yes, national, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. About the closest firms that I would consider regional are in the Kansas City
Kansas
area.
City,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the one in Oklahoma too.
Yeah,
SG.
well, there's Dallas, which is.
SGR,
yeah, they're in Dallas.
They're in Dallas, yeah, okay.
In your studies to put all this together, and looking, like you said, I think you mentioned Lawrence, I think you mentioned Columbia, others. Do they have a citizen engagement piece, a committee, if you will, most all of them, or all?
The RFPs that I've seen, some do, some don't. Yeah, some are more extensive than others. I mean, Lawrence just went through it, and they had a very extensive community input process. You know, I'm not sure about Salina. I don't know if theirs was
I don't
quite as
believe they
much.
did.
Yeah,
No.
so there's a spectrum there.
For example, then using the Lawrence and whatever, but I guess anyone that uses a committee, where was the committee involved? Were they in the beginning piece, after the RFP?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know that I could accurately answer that and what Lawrence did on that.
Okay. Or
But
others,
certainly,
I
I
guess.
don't think that's a bad thought, is to, you know, engage the community maybe at the front end, and just as you guys are formulating your thoughts, I mean, there might be some good things that come out of that say, hey, yeah, like, you know, we do need to think about that.
When I served on the Reno County Search
Yeah.
Committee, it was as a citizen. That was before I was an elected official. And they had already hired a firm, I believe, but we
Right.
were involved from there on out. We read all the applications. We narrowed it down to 5 and then 3 and had phone interviews and before inviting them to the.
That would be probably the most prevalent typical process is just what you described, not community engagement doesn't occur until the process starts. And because the headhunting firm helps you facilitate that, helps
Exactly.
you develop the profile.
So say you get 4 RFPs back, and you begin some interview process. Does the whole governing body, are they part of that interview process or what?
Well, that's going to be up to you guys, and I think that's part of the discussion I think John wanted to have today is, did you want the whole council? Did you want to have a subsection of the council be kind of the liaisons to the rest of the council? The other question is, at what level do you want me to facilitate or not facilitate? Just get start, all that kind of stuff is, I think, on the table for discussion.
Well, one thought I had, it said to identify 2 council members to lead, and this, I'm just throwing this out there, so I'm not nominating you, Nancy and John, but I kind of am. Since the 3 of us are, in an election, a contested election, and may not be here for the entire process, does it make sense to ask the 2 at the end who are here for another 2 years, guaranteed to be those 2 representatives? The other option is to have us all involved. I'm fine with that too. I'm not trying to get out of it.
I think the 2 at the end should be the.
Well, it's kind of a little bit of a process like we do when we hire professional engineering services. Like, for example, on the stormwater, we had staff typically does the interviews, brings a recommendation. We did invite, I think, Councilman Dave Line to serve on that one because of his background with that. But that keeps this process moving, and those it can happen a lot quicker probably than having them in an open meeting and interviewing, and that it gets a little complicated. So I think Councilman Jade is on the right track with that.
Nancy and Jade, 2 representatives.
Now, John.
You're going to have to help me with my campaign if you do that, John.
I would second Jade's motion. That it would be the 2 on that end.
Is that going to cut into your golf schedule? I know. I knew you would have that concern.
Lots of travels. You got a lot on my plate right now.
It won't take very long.
Well, the beauty of hiring an executive search firm is once you get them launched, there's a lot. They're going to be doing the work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The
Guess what, John?
the 2 governing bodies, again, what we're referring to is just for the review of the search firms, if that's the way we're going. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I mean, that was just a suggestion.
Yeah.
But Mayor, it's ultimately the direction you want to.
Well, no,
steer us
I
in.
want to make sure again that the whole body gets an opportunity. But and I guess maybe that's what we need to clarify. Are we all in agreement or not that we need to be looking towards a firm versus utilizing just HR or the system that was used 10 to 15 years ago with that?
Oh, definitely.
Yes, on the firm.
Definitely in
Okay.
favor of a firm.
It seemed like that was the
Yeah.
consensus, but I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that was the case. With that being said then, okay, the RFPs can go out immediately, I assume, or shortly thereof. I think there was a timeline included on here.
Yeah, we can, again, what I would suggest we do is put this committee together. They bless the final RFP, do any tweaks that need to be done, then we launch that out. I think it's about a 2-week turnaround time before we start getting RFPs back. And then, from there, the committee can start reviewing them, and I'll be happy to facilitate and do whatever I can do there to help to support the committee. The back end type work, setting up meetings, that kind of thing, so.
Now, is there merit then to, you mentioned committee twice, once before and once after. Is there merit then to having a committee, or are we talking about just the committee of 2?
Yeah, I think it's, that's you're going to be your guys' call, but I would say, it's going to be a lot easier working with 2, maybe 3 than it is with the full council and trying to get everybody together and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think a smaller kind of spearhead group that can then take it back to the full council and say, hey, this is what we did and this is what we're recommending, is kind of I think the thought that John and I were having about this. So.
Yeah, since we're selecting the firm,
Right.
Selecting the
not,
firm, not the
not the
candidate.
candidates.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
comfortable with keeping it to a smaller number of participants.
I want to piggyback on something you said about being involved. Excuse me. I'd appreciate, Tom, your staying involved, and John likewise. John, I know you've done some consulting, and so, how do I want to say this? I would ask that you not wait necessarily for us to ask you something. If you see that maybe there's something we ought to take into account, just based on your professional backgrounds.
Yeah.
I'd much rather that, you know, saying, hey, did you think about, or do you want to think about, whether it's with the committee of two or whether it's with the council of
Certainly.
5.
Yep, be happy to, for sure.
Are you guys both, Nancy has said, I think I heard
John?
you say that you're open to serving on that. Yeah, I can see it. So are you going to just pull out, John, or are you going to say yes?
You'll do it, John.
You've got experience in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question, is that we got so much experience,
Yeah.
but let's get some young blood in here.
Well, it shouldn't take too long
it's
to
not.
come
Okay.
up with a firm.
All right.
We aren't, it's not
Well,
like
and
you're signing
yeah,
up.
when we start getting community members engaged, that can be taken into consideration. I remember when I applied to be on the county one, what each commissioner did is accept applications to serve on the search committee, and you included the demographics in your application, your age, you know, your
Yeah.
gender, your race, your what you do for a living, so we can be assured that we get a diverse representation of our city.
But that's a step ahead of what we're.
That's
looking at.
totally-
That's way
yeah.
ahead of where we are.
Yeah.
Right. We're just
Yeah.
kicking this off to get the RFPs out, and
Right.
get them in. And,
Right.
Do you feel like you have enough direction?
I think so, yep.
7 o'clock in the morning meetings are really good.
You know what, I'm an early riser, so I'm good with that too.
Eight's the earliest.
Earliest. 7 a.m. Oh, it's
That sounded like a yes from me.
yeah.
Well, and again, it sounds like you are accepting the responsibility, and we appreciate that.
Sure.
But as you're reviewing the RFPs, I think, you know, we would all agree that there has to be a community engagement piece, which I know they'll all bring, but I can't overstate how important that is. I've heard from a lot of folks that, and not everybody can be at the table, I understand, but we got to have fair and equitable representation. So as you're reviewing those, you know, that's one thing I know when it comes back to us, I'm going to be looking at heavily is their community engagement piece and so on.
And I think we would all concur that that
Absolutely.
is essential. And I like Jade's retelling of how they did it for the county, that they apply to be on the committee and not just John and I pick people that we know and like.
Right.
So
That's a good
I think
point.
that's important.
Okay. Well, it's a start. And
Yeah.
again, by no means is anything set in stone, so if you have greater ideas in the middle of the night as you wake up and whatever, please get to Tom, get to John, others, and we can go from there. We're just trying to identify the best individual, whoever that is, that leads us into the future. And this is critical to the vision of Hutchinson, and as this particular body, and then as Jade pointed out, potentially others, depending on outcomes of elections. So, okay.
Do you want to
Thanks, Tom.
reapply? Would you consider reapplying?
Interim?
Might.
Is this some elaborate scheme to get a pay raise?
Retire and then do a
Come
double
back.
dip.
Yeah,
Double
right.
dip, yeah, right.
Anyway,
Thanks,
okay.
Tom.
Thanks again, Tom. Appreciate it. Thanks for the hard
Thanks,
work.
Tom.
Tom, are you gonna set a time when we can get together? I mean, you
Yeah,
wanna-
I think that's kind of next steps is let's have
Okay.
the meeting and just kind of map out finalization of RFP and timeline and all that
Okay.
kind of good stuff, so.
That sounds
Yep.
good.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, next item.
Item 10, report of city officials.
Nancy, I'll start with my
Nothing.
John?
No, nothing this morning?
Steve?
Please vote.
There you go.
Yeah.
Jade?
Right. I had one question I wanted to bring up. The school board's vote yesterday evening. Did we get any information back on that?
Yes,
We
I was
did.
gonna.
He's
Brief you
gonna
on that,
tell us.
Okay.
Okay.
We just do that in my report?
Yeah, that's fine. That's the only item I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me.
Perfect, okay. And yes, we addressed that, and you will in a second. The other thing I was going to throw out is John and I are going to be meeting with the county tomorrow for my own benefit, and I'd be more than willing to share. There was a piece about the property devaluations, but then there was another piece about the restaurant corridor and how it was impacted. And I read it at least 5 times, and I think I get it, but I'm not sure if I get it. So I asked John for some clarification. I said I was going to approach the county. He said he was going to approach the county. We said let's try and do it together. So we will be having a visit with them tomorrow morning, and maybe we'll have a little better understanding of how that particular situation worked, and then the implication of that if there's other locations in the city of a similar nature, and if that's a pro or a con, or how that goes.
Yeah, look forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, because that was
Good
totally.
idea. Good.
It was puzzling, yeah.
Very puzzling.
So, that's all I had, Mr. Manager.
First thing, special meeting, August 13th. Heard a little bit about that this morning. Public hearing, 9 a.m. here.
Yeah.
And it'll just be to consider the CDBG application. And I think Amy told me there was one other thing that we were going to add to that agenda, and I don't remember what it was. Anyway, there'll be some other small items. Yeah.
Special meeting next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday morning.
Okay.
And we'll send out.
I thought this thing that we signed for a special meeting had only one agenda item. What is this?
The second one is just a quick accepting of the emergency services grant.
Oh, the grant, yeah. So, and there's a time period there.
I'm giving you a hard time, whether it's you or whether it's John or both.
The next thing I wanted to send to you is I don't know how do you pass this down, but had a conversation with Stutzman's, I'm sorry, Nancy. And they've got a big concern about contamination of our recycling carts now, upwards of 30% contamination. And essentially what's happened to some of the carts they pick up, they end up in the landfill because they're contaminated. And so we've got to start kind of re-educating, if you will. We've got, in my opinion, one of the best recycling programs around.
I love it.
And, Stutzman's have invested, millions of dollars in that recycle center down there. The recycling market is not good. You guys have read about that around the country. Nancy shared some stories with me about the East Coast. And so we're going to work with, Rebecca's going to work on our social media, the way we can try to help educate. Stutzman's are going to do that as well. But we really want to just, get the word out. It's very important that, this contamination issue kind of be eliminated. Otherwise, what we're recycling isn't even being recycled.
Yeah.
It's going in.
So frustrating.
So, yeah. And again, it's a very easy program, but I think we kind of get, one of the things that's probably the most asked question is the plastic grocery bags, trash bags that we get hundreds of those. They are not recyclable. And there's other things, styrofoam, people look at that and look at the bottom and there's some recycled deal stamped on it, not appropriate. So there's just some things there, and I think most of that we know, but sometimes we just need to kind of re-educate ourselves, so.
Shredded paper. Well,
Yeah, and shredded paper.
We violate that.
Do you?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, you can't. That's a no-no.
I know it. I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Nowadays, just throw it in the trash because
Yeah.
they've got your information in other ways. So I
Well,
wouldn't worry.
I think one of the biggest things is people don't wash things out.
Yeah.
No,
I
that's
mean,
true.
they throw,
Yeah.
anyway.
But that's just a piece of information, and we'll
Good.
work together to try to help get that message out. And again, I think people mean well. It's just sometimes a matter of some education that we can
Education.
help with.
Yeah.
And re-education, we all need that, so.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to mention, a couple of weeks ago, I sent out a note about the Arc Canoe Group, that visited here before, and they're interested in the Fun Valley site. And, my thought was before we request a formal proposal, whether this governing body is interested in even having that conversation to sell that property, and if so, how we want to go about selling it. We've got a policy on the sale of city property that allows you to deviate from different things, but, whether there's other interested parties or is it a specific project that we're interested in. But I just wanted to see if there's any thoughts on that before we kind of move forward to push them to present you a formal proposal of what they're looking at.
I'm interested in hearing their proposal. The thing that comes to mind is what kind of prompted that was the Park and Rec master plan that had a particular recommendation. So I'd certainly like to hear from staff. Is there a sense that that's really, really a good idea and we ought to hang on to it, or not really?
Yeah.
Before we offer to somebody or suggest that we're open to selling it.
So I can, yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
We can bring it back as
Yeah.
another, a formal agenda item,
Yeah,
you know, at some
I
point.
met with them, and they, of course, were, in responding to the Park and Recreation study, because they've had some thoughts on using that land. And I'm not sure the city wants to own an adventure park, but that's my own personal feeling. So I think we need to listen to them, see what they have to say.
I agree with Nancy. I think that they've already made investment in our community and they've got some good ideas. And I would hate for us to hold out on something that we might do in a decade if we have funding and it fits in the CIP, when we have the opportunity to have something now.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't want to be short-sighted and sell that area short, but again, I think it's definitely worthy of a hearing.
Okay. I'll be in touch with them and have them put together a more formal proposal. We'll also have a
Do
conversation.
we have some
on-
mapping of all of that?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not-
we'll need
I'm
to-
not familiar
we'll
with
have that,
exactly
yeah.
the layout of it.
It's kind of an interesting piece. It's
Yeah, I've
got
never seen it.
challenges. It
Really?
shares access. It's got a lagoon
It's got
system
some
next to it.
slides. Yeah.
PD has some ownership of some ground out there or
The
something?
FOP.
Yeah,
Uh,
excuse me,
yeah,
FOP
yeah,
is what I
yeah.
meant to say, yeah.
Oh, the FOP,
Yeah.
really?
To the very back, but that's the shared access. This goes.
This is
that's
all on the
beyond
north
that.
side of the Fourth Street then, huh?
Yeah,
North
it's on the
side.
north side.
On the
of
north
Fourth
side of Fourth Street?
Yeah.
Where the water slide used to be?
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, Justin and what his plans are for the area needs to be at least
Yeah.
considered. Selling the property versus leasing the property. If it's sold, what if something doesn't work out?
Yes,
Are we
I agree.
out to
Yeah.
lunch on
Yeah.
owning, or how do we reacquire it if necessary, first right
Well,
of
or do we
refusals,
want to
things like that.
reacquire it?
If we even do, yeah.
Yeah, I
things
mean,
like
that's
that.
all.
So,
out
yeah,
there,
worthy
too.
of a conversation, sounds
Yeah,
like.
definitely.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
anything
good.
else?
That's
Ed?
all I need. And one other thing, on the
The
traffic light issue, received a note last night that the board had voted 5-0 to not cost share. I've got a more detailed description I'm going to share with you. I'm just going to read an email I got from the superintendent this morning about 9:50. It says, John, the board had a lengthy discussion about the light at 30th and Lucille. We understand the safety aspect of having a stoplight at that location. We contacted KSDE, which is the Kansas State Department of Education, and attorneys at KASB as to their recommendations as to using educational dollars for traffic lights and road improvements. And they both had strong recommendations that we not use educational dollars for that purpose. That advice was the deciding factor in the vote that took place to not provide half the cost for the light to go up at 30th and Lucille. The board strongly believes the light would be beneficial in protecting patrons and would respectfully request the city continue with the process of putting up the lights since the work is started, they're half done, they say, and USD 313 is not able to spend educational dollars for that purpose. I would say they have spent educational dollars for that purpose on the Plum Creek Street where we required them to enlarge the street, create the turning lanes. That would have been a street project that they would have paid educational dollars through the bond issue or what have you. But
Just so we have the facts again, the project estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 or 13.
yeah, roughly, yeah.
We were going to cover all the labor and things of that nature. The cost share would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 a piece or something like that. Okay. Is there any appetite to revisit the? We were pretty emphatic that we wanted the cost share originally.
Nope.
Nope.
There it is. Others?
Nope.
Okay.
I know.
I want to
You
say
live out
that
there.
I have not been contacted by any school board members. I've not been contacted by anyone who lives in that area, and I've not been contacted by any parent who has a child in that area. However, living in that area myself, I know this is going to negatively impact the citizens of Hutchinson. And no, we didn't create the situation. The county created the situation, and the school by placing a school in an unimproved road many, many years ago. Hindsight's always 20/20. But I can't help but think in a few months we're going to be revisiting this. And it might be of greater cost at that point. I don't know, John, you could speak to that. Or it's at least going to be a greater cost of educating people on how to kind of navigate that area. So I would be interested in doing it just because it's the right thing to do. Is it fair? No. But is it a ton of money? Not really. If we have one accident there, if we could prevent one accident, it's worth it in my estimate. But I am surprised that I haven't heard from, like, literally anyone. I've not heard from anyone in that area, the school or residents or parents. So I was kind of surprised that it doesn't seem to them to be too big of a concern. But don't you think it's going to be a concern?
I mean, I think it will, and it's, yeah. And the problem with reacting later is more difficult because school's in session, and we've had the summer to work on it. We've got the poles put up, which is probably the biggest part of the project. Thinking that was not going to be an issue, and again, that was probably on us for being a little more proactive, getting things rolling. Yeah. But I would say if it doesn't happen now, likely there would be some issues. I just can't imagine there wouldn't be, and it's going to be a finger pointing. Well, whose job is it to take care of that? Is it the city, street? It's you do that. You do traffic control, and we're going to point the finger. Well, there was an opportunity, and so
I will say this issue came up when I was on the board of directors of the Cosmosphere, and people weren't using the stoplight at Plum. They were crossing in the middle of the road. We had 2 very horrible accidents. So the city said they would go away from their traffic study policy of putting in a light there if the Cosmosphere cost shared. And that was primarily for the community college. And I think the community college cost shared as well. Wasn't that a 1/3?
Well, the Cosmosphere did, and maybe the college did on that one, and then the college cost shared on Plum.
On the Plum one.
The 2 of them there.
So I don't particularly agree with their assessment and the way the school board voted. But again, it's not about who's right or what's fair. I think it's about just doing the right thing for people we know are going to be impacted. I'm not necessarily happy about it. I'd prefer that they cost share, but it's going to be a problem. We're going to deal with it in a month or 2, and we're going to be seen as being reactive instead of proactive because we were insistent upon doing the fair thing, which isn't always necessarily the right thing. That's my piece. Again, I'm not happy about it. It's not fair, but I think we should do it. I think I'm in the minority here. I think I'm going to shut up.
And I've
Your
thought.
point's well taken, Jade. I don't disagree with you in the comments you've made. This isn't the first time we've talked about this equitability with another entity or another entity, and it's just reasonable to me that there would be a joint approach to resolving.
But if others choose to be unreasonable, does that mean we should choose to be unreasonable? I mean, a lot of times that's the way it works in this world right now. And I think we should work toward greater communication and collaboration with these other taxing entities. Even if maybe they're not interested in doing that, as the city, we need to continue those efforts. Continue to work together. We can have these conversations outside.
Big deal. Their plan, and I don't know what it is